Well, the cost of doing business is taking a toll on many family farms today. New legislature is aiming to better support the rural economy by lowering interest rates and making loans more accessible for farmers and ag borrowers. It's being co-led by Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, who joins us now for a closer look. We sure appreciate your time, Senator. Tell us a little bit more about the Acre Act and what all it aims to do.
Well, Jennifer, good morning to you and all your listeners. And I know your listeners like me that we're concerned about the next generation of farmers and ranchers and how they get into the business. As I talk to those young men and women, the cost of capital is a big issue. So maybe someone wants to add a circle of corn. Another rancher may want to add a half section of pasture land. They have to borrow money. And of course, that interest rate impacts them. So what our legislation does is it allows that community bank, that banker that you've been using for decades, to give you a better interest rate, to lower it by a point or two. And maybe that'll be the difference between you getting in the business or not. And it can also be used in our rural communities for housing as well. That's another huge issue in all of our rural communities, is the cost of housing. So again, this would let those community banks be able to drop their interest rate a point or two and maybe give you access to that home you've been dreaming of.
Sounds good. So speak to the need for this legislation as farmers cope with current economic factors, and tell us what the next steps are.
Yeah, so farmers have had a record drop in net farm income. And I really think, tariffs are in the news, but I think the big issue is probably interest rates still. So as we drive those interest rates down, it's going to help the American farmer rancher with their operation loans, let alone new purchases like this. The next steps, I think, would be to get a hearing in the Ag Committee, perhaps in the Banking Committee as well, just to discuss how it could impact our farmers and ranchers and rural America, especially as well. Again, everywhere I go, folks are concerned about the cost of housing in rural communities, and this would be one way to get in there to that nicer home with a little bit less of an interest rate.
Another ever-developing topic weighing on farmers right now is tariffs. Obviously, some potential growing pains with all of the back and forth, but what's your message to the ag community as farmers approach the growing season with all of this uncertainty?
Yeah, well, first of all, big thanks. I know President Trump, even in a State of Union message last week, talked about that his love for farmers and his compassion for rural America. So thank you for giving him some patience as we work through this. Thank you for being, first of all, a parent and a grandparent worried about fentanyl coming into our country. So President Trump is using these tariffs to stop the flow of fentanyl in this country that's still killing 100, 200 Americans every day as well. It's going to bring more jobs into America. You just mentioned here this shipbuilding happening in America. That's because of President Trump's threats of tariffs. These are one tool. The tariffs are one tool. Remember, Trump 1.0, he gave the American farmer $28 billion of tariff money. And I think that there's other levers that President Trump can use to help us out. I think year-round E15 is a great example. If we get year-round E15, that would replace 80% of our corn exports right now. So that's but one example. 45Z is another great example. Giving us a farm bill, pushing a farm bill through the finish line would also help our American farmers. So tariffs is one piece of the puzzle.
Let's switch gears just a little bit. You've been a leading champion of the Make America Healthy Again movement and have helped form the Maha Caucus. But what all does that entail, and what does it mean for farmers and ranchers?
Yeah, again, my farmers and ranchers are doing so much of what these experts, these Maha moms are pushing. You think about regenerative agriculture is really it's rotating crops, it's bringing manure from the feedlot, from the dairy, putting on a cover crop and having cattle go in there and graze that. That's what regenerative agriculture is. This is what we were raised on. I think we've gotten away from that in some places and instances, but we want to have the most nutrient-dense food that we can have with the minimal amount of fertilizer and toxins on those food, and we're doing that again. I think my sorghum growers in Western Kansas are great examples of precision agriculture, growing more with less, and then measuring and proving how little fertilizer, how little some of the pesticides we're using as well. So we got to share our story, though. We got to brag about the great job we're doing with the environment and making our food more nutrient rich.
Well, before we wrap up, the ag sector is keeping a close eye on government funding discussions and the continuing resolution. What impact do you see this having on farmers and ranchers moving forward?
Well, if the government shuts down tomorrow, it'll be the Chuck Schumer shutdown. It'll be the Schumer shutdown. He's totally responsible. That we need 7 or 8 Democrat senators to get this across the finish line. It takes 60 votes. This is something that the Schumer Biden administration should have taken care of last September. They gambled. I mean, I hate to talk politics too much on RFD-TV, but they gambled and they lost. They thought they would have the presidency, the Senate, and the House. They wanted to spend more money. So they're at odds right now. If this shuts down, it'll be the Schumer shutdown, but I can't see it lasting for long. If they want to keep us here, we'll keep working on President Trump's nominations and get more of them across the finish line. We'll get through this.
U.S. Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, what a privilege to have you with us today. We appreciate you joining us.